In Week 14, there were letdowns. In Week 15, it was the weather. In Week 16, you might have been cost the fantasy championship by an injury bug biting your hide. How you doing, everybody? I'm Dave Richard. He's Jamie Eisenberg. We're the senior fantasy football writers here for CBSSports.com. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everybody out there watching along the CBS Audience Network. And Jamie, Week 16, fantasy owners got their lineups ready. They played the matchups. They did everything that they've been doing all season long. And then some of the key players in fantasy football went down with an injury, and it left them high and dry in the championship game.
Yeah, Dave, it was a rough week, especially if you had guys like Willie Parker, Marquez Colston, some of the bigger names in fantasy leagues. You could take a look at the graphic here. Willis, McGahee, Kevin Jones, Joseph Addai. All these guys really were vital in a lot of people getting to the fantasy championship. Don't forget Greg Jennings also left with an ankle
injury.
Joey Galloway with a shoulder injury. So it was rough, and I don't know about you, but I'm sure there were a lot of people out there that really suffered because of these injuries.
Right, and there's nothing you can really do about it.
No.
I mean, injuries are impossible to predict, and obviously if you can go back in time, you would bench Willie Parker for Ahmad Bradshaw. Of course, that makes the most sense, right? Yeah, Najee Davenport also. But the key is that you just you got to be happy that it happened now, that you had these players for the whole season, and that they'll be ready for next season.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you'd rather be in this situation than having a Larry Johnson or a Ronnie Brown, guys who are quality fantasy players leading up to the middle of the season before they got hurt and were lost for the rest of the year, guys like Marvin Harrison also. So it's been sort of a rough year with injuries to a lot of big-name guys. And
absolutely.
Once you know it, at the time when you need these players, they're not there for you.
Yeah, but it's more than just injuries this week. There were some weather issues, and it dampened some quarterback play in Week 16. Derek Anderson, Brett Favre, Eli Manning, all three of them feeling the effects of strong wind. Jamie, people will say all the time, you play your studs in the playoffs. Bring who brought you to the dance. Bring, you know what I'm saying. It's the old Eric Mack quote.
George
Fool me once, shame on me. All right. Should we pay more attention to the weather at the beginning of drafts next year, or is it just one of those things you have to wait for towards the end of the season?
Well, I think you definitely have to pay attention to weather. It's a circumstance of which guys are going to be in the worst conditions. I don't think weather played so much a part with Anderson. I think it was just a matter of poor play against an opponent in a rival game. So for me, it's the other two guys that really played a part in terms of weather. But obviously, if you had guys like Kurt Warner or Drew Brees, you're going to go with them in better weather conditions. If you have a quarterback playing in a better situation, like a Mark Bulger at home or Ben Roethlisberger on the road against the Rams this past week. So I think you look at it, Dave, as sort of looking ahead to next year. You sort of have to gauge if you can get one of those guys or pick up a guy, going into a better matchup. But weather is going to play a part no matter what.
And it always does. It is part of the matchup. It's dance with the one who brought you, is what I meant to say.
Yeah, you figured that out.
Okay, now one player that has stepped up over the last 2 weeks because of the bad weather is Lawrence Maroney, running back of the New England Patriots. This is a guy that we were writing off last 2 games, 260 rush yards, 2 touchdowns. Jamie, what's going on with Maroney?
I think it's just a matter of, Dave, that the fact that he's finally getting the opportunity to carry the ball. We saw early throughout the season that it was a couple carries in the first half, maybe a few in the second half. There was one game where he didn't even touch the ball in the first half.
Right,
I think it was Week 13 it was. So it was Heath Evans, it was Kevin Falk, it was Sammy Morris before he got hurt. So Lawrence Maroney, it's funny you mentioned Eric Mack. He's the one that said in our CBS mock draft for 2008, he's going to take Lawrence Maroney because next year he knows at this time of the season, if he's his number 3 running back, that he can sort of plug him in and get this type of production. So it'd be nice to see that Maroney getting this carries and stuff throughout the season, but finally get a chance to use him, and hopefully he's helping you in your playoffs.
Where would you draft him in 2008?
I still think he's at 3rd round at best. I'm looking at him as a number 2 fantasy running back at the highest possible selection that you would take him, just because he's not going to get the carries. If all the cast of characters come back for the Patriots, Randy Moss is a free agent, so that's going to determine sort of how their passing game shakes out. But I think you can see Lawrence Maroney still being in the same type of position. Throw the ball all over the place for New England, and then, at the end of the game, if he's still in there, he's going to get the carries.
To me, you can get a good quarterback in round 3. You can get a good wide receiver in round 3. You might be able to get Antonio Gates in round 3. I would take one of those guys ahead of Maroney, a guy who's guaranteed nothing at that point.
Yeah, no.
That's what I would do.
It's funny how you look at the class of running backs from last year with Reggie Bush, Joseph Addai, Lawrence Maroney, how Maroney really has slid down to the third guy. Maybe the second guy with Bush, depending on how you're going to view him next year. But to me, Maroney's still the 3rd just because of the lack of touches.
Okay, now Maroney is a guy who's going to be playing in Week 17 because the Patriots are going for the undefeated season.
And Tom Brady going for the touchdown
record. And Tom Brady going for the touchdown record. Exactly right.
Still needs 2 more.
There's still going to be an opportunity for New England to play. If you're playing fantasy football in Week 17, and we don't recommend doing such a thing, but if you're in a championship game or what have you, let's do a quick rundown of the teams that are going to be playing for nothing, playoff teams that are out there that are going to be resting their starters. It's only going to be Indianapolis and Jacksonville in the AFC.
Yep.
Do you really start your Patriots assuming that they're going to play close to a full game?
Well, I think you have to, just because Tom Brady is really, talking about guys who've gotten you there. I don't want to talk about dancing because I don't want to dance with you. But, guys who have gotten you to this point, Tom Brady you're not going to sit him because, again, he still is chasing a touchdown record. He's 2 away from breaking Peyton Manning's single season record, which means Randy Moss will be in there, Wes Welker, Dante Stallworth, Jabbar Gaffney, Ben Watson if he's healthy. All those guys will be playing. So I think you play all the Patriots and just sort of take your chances if, in fact, they only play maybe a half or 3/4.
Completely different situation in the NFC. Dallas, Green Bay, Seattle, Tampa Bay, and the Giants. Those are your top 5 seeds in that order in the NFC. All 5 of these teams are going to be sitting their key players. Don't expect any of those studs to play more than a series or 2. I mean, Tony Romo's a guy you got to sit this week.
Yeah, it's almost like a preseason game for these guys just because they're not going to take any chances with the playoff seeds locked up and nothing really to play for. The interesting one, though, in the AFC is going to be what happens Monday night between the Chargers and the Broncos.
That's
that
true.
Will determine
if Denver upsets San Diego on Monday night, then we know that Pittsburgh and San Diego will rest their guys, too.
Yes, because then they'll still be playing for the number 3 seed.
Okay. You winning any fantasy championships this year?
I hope so. Still have 2 that are on the line right now. So one is an experts league with other fantasy sites. So we want to represent CBSSports.com well and do well. Another one with Eric Mack in our auction league. So we have to win to.
Yeah, we got to
bragging rights.
We beat them in their baseball league.
That's right.
So we got to make sure they don't beat us in our football league. It's part of the rivalry.
I
lost one championship game, and I need a big game from LaDainian Tomlinson tonight.
What about the league where
not
you beat
asking
Amber?
for much. Well, that's the one. The league where I beat Amber and made her wear all that Miami Hurricanes stuff. That's the one I need LaDainian to have a big game.
The Gators are still better than that.
We're doing better. Whatever. He's a Gator. For Jamie Eisberg, I'm Dave Richard. Good luck if you're playing in Week 17. And don't forget, we're going to be here all off-season long to help you get ready for 2008. We're already looking forward to it. You should be too. Thanks for coming out.